This is Amanda Edwards, and I'd like to welcome you to the Edwards Empowerment Talks. This podcast provides a platform to empower individuals and the community by showcasing stories of resilient people who have refused to let life's challenges prevent them from achieving their dreams. The Edwards Empowerment Talks will also highlight the work being done in the community that will help to positively shift the trajectory of this nation. Through stories of adversity, perseverance, drive, struggle, and success, the podcast will empower others to believe in their dreams and pursue those dreams despite whatever challenges may come their way. It is also a vehicle to equip the community with the tools necessary to be the change they want to see. I welcome you to tune in. You don't want to miss this. Welcome everyone to the first episode of the Edwards Empowerment Talks for 2021. We're so excited to launch our new year of episodes, and I could not be more excited about our first guest, who happens to be Bo Porter. Bo Porter has had a tremendous career defying the odds and, of course, making his wildest dreams come true. He now runs Core Multimedia, but before that served as a Major League Baseball player, as well as manager, as well as leading a foundation to help the community around him. He does so much in the community, and I am so grateful he was willing to be my guest today. So, Bo, welcome to the show.
Amanda, thank you so much for that gracious introduction. And I'm honored to be on your show. I've followed your career and very proud of all the things in which you've been able to accomplish as well. And I'm a big fan of yours. So congratulations on a great career. And it's crazy as you started naming off some of those things. It kind of takes me back, through the course of my career. And I don't talk about myself too often. So when I hear someone else going through that chronological order, like, player, coach, manager, front office, it's been a whirlwind. But I'll tell you what, there's been a lot of steps along the way in which I've learned some great lessons. I've had some great mentors. I feel like my best years are still ahead of me. So I'm excited about the future as well.
Well, excellent. And I mean, that's what our show is about, is talking about stories of people who have defied the odds, done the impossible, but also been resilient, because sometimes we get knocked down and we have to get back up. And sometimes we have to dream new dreams and pursue higher heights. And so you've been the embodiment of that. And along the way, you've always given back. So something in which, you really stands out about you is that you always keep the door open for the next person or group of people to follow. So let me start back with your childhood. I know that you grew up in New Jersey and was curious about what your upbringing was like. Did you aspire at an early age to become a baseball player? Tell me a little bit about your upbringing and background.
Well, I guess I'll start with where I'm from, which is Newark, New Jersey. And many people that may not know about Newark, New Jersey, it's Brick City. It's what I call, the heart of the inner city on the East Coast. Mm-hmm. And I grew up, it was not favorable conditions in the area, in the community in which I grew up. My mom had me at the age of 16. Okay. So you're talking about a baby having a baby. Mm-hmm. And many people around her, at the time, told her, this is the biggest mistake you would ever make. You're a child yourself. You're not old enough or mature enough to have a baby. And she was adamant, that she wanted to have this baby. And, 48 years later, if you let her tell the story, she says the best mistake she ever made in her life.
Wow.
But back to the community in which I grew up. I mean, it was drug infested. It was, gang violence. You talk about, whether it's drug use, drug pushers, armed robberies, you name it, everything was happening around me. But I will give my mom and my family a lot of credit because they did everything that they could to keep me on the straight and narrow. And I always was moved to sports and always was excited about playing sports, even from a very young age, as young as I can remember as 5 years old. But because we didn't have, sports in Little League or Pop Warner or small fry basketball. We didn't have any of those things in my immediate community. Mm-hmm. Now, some of those things exist in outskirts communities, and it was a kind gesture of a neighborhood friend that lived across the street from the parking lot in which we used to always play, stickball. And I talk about stickball because it's something that you played in the inner city against a brick wall where you create your own field. But on 14th Street, where we played stickball in the parking lot, across the street was a residential homes. So I would hit the ball out of the parking lot and break the man, Mr. Taylor, who lived across the street. I would break his windows.
Oh, no, not Mr. Taylor's windows.
Yes. So Mr. Taylor would come over to my house. He would say to my mom, Miss Porter, Bo's broken my window. Again, my mom would say, Mr. Taylor, listen, these kids have no place to play. Put me on a payment plan. I'll do the best I can to pay you back.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Taylor worked on the other side of town, over where they did have Little League baseball. It was called South Ward.
Okay.
So Mr. Taylor, who worked at the bank on the corner of Leslie Street and Lyons Avenue, right down the street was a park called Green Acres.
Okay.
We had Little League tryouts. Mr. Taylor, on his lunch break, he sees the flyer for Little League tryouts. He then gets the flyer, comes back to my mom. He said, listen, I sit on my porch. I watch these kids play. It's pretty clear to me that Bo is better than most of these kids.
Well, you had to be if you're over there knocking out his windows, right?
Have you ever thought about putting him into Little League? Yeah. So my mom, she's a young, 25-year-old trying to just make ends meet and working 2-3 jobs. She looked at Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, listen, one, I don't have a car, so I don't know how he's going to get there. I'm pretty sure there's a fee involved. This is just not going to work. Bo's not going to be able to go across town and play baseball. Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Taylor, it wasn't a foundation, but he took down all of those barriers.
Okay.
He said to my mom, if I agree to pay the $25 for Bo to go and play and agree to take him twice a week when he has to be there, will you let him play?
Wow.
And my mom, of course, she go, yes, if you're going to, take him over there and you're going to pay the fee, absolutely. Well, Mr. Taylor takes me over there. I try out. I get selected with the number 1 pick by the team that finished in last place the year before.
Okay.
We go on to win the next 3 Southwood Little League championships. My Little League coach, rest in peace, was a man by the name of Mr. Miller.
Okay.
Mr. Miller worked in New York. He was an avid Yankee fan, but community service. He loved baseball. He loved kids. So he volunteered to be a coach. Mm-hmm. Well, as our Little League coach, he worked in New York. His job gave him tickets, complimentary tickets, to go to a Yankee game. Mm-hmm. So he decided that he was going to take the 15 tickets. You know what? I'm going to take these 12 kids on my Little League baseball team. Now, here it is. I'm 9 years old. Coming to Southwood Little League was the first time I ever left like the 3-block radius where I went to school and where I grew up.
So when that was happening, did you, at that time, when you were playing stickball, not baseball, but stickball, were you dreaming about becoming a baseball player, or were you just trying to have fun at that point?
I was just trying to have fun.
Okay.
Because, Amanda, I'm a firm believer that the untraveled eye can't see. Mm. And I had never left my surrounding.
You said 3-block radius.
Yes. So stickball, pole-to-pole football, mm-hmm. We would take a empty milk carton, container, cut the bottom out of it, and we'll nail it to a tree. That became our basketball hoop. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have those kind of aspirations because I didn't know any better.
Right.
But once I got into Little League, and then, this was an aha moment. It was June 26th. I remember vividly, Mr. Miller takes us to Yankee Stadium, and here it is. I'm 9 years old, had never been to a Major League Baseball game, and I'm sitting there at Yankee Stadium. My eyes are about as big as watermelons, and it hit me. I was like, I want to play Major League Baseball. This is ultra cool.
Yeah.
And I sat there that day. I met Dave Winfield. I met Willie Randolph and Don Manley and Ricky Henderson. And so it was just amazing watching these Major League Baseball players. So I come back home with a totally different mindset. And I have to thank, one, Mr. Taylor for signing me up for Little League, and two, Mr. Miller for taking us and putting us into that atmosphere that allowed me to dream big.
And I think so many people, we take for granted that we've been exposed to a lot of things. We see it on TV, or we at some way or some juncture get access, but there's so many children who are in this circumstances just like you were, where you couldn't have dreamed something you never conceived of. And so until you had that moment where Coach Miller was willing to take you to the stadium and meet these players, you would never have even imagined that you were capable, let alone dreamed of that being your life. And then, of course, pursuing it like you did. So that's pretty incredible. So you were the all-star Little Leaguer. And when did you have any challenges along that journey before you got older and started to really get competitive outside of Little League?
Yes, there were challenges along the way, and a lot of my challenges were circumstances.
Yeah.
And I'll fast forward. Southwood Little League, they have what's called Project Pride, has an all-star team every year that competes internationally. And Southwood Little League had never had a player, make the Project Pride team. So it's comprised of the Essex County and all of the surrounding counties. They select the top 18, Little League players to play on this team every year. So when I was 11 years old, I got selected to try out. Now the tryouts, they start with 150 players and they reduce it down to the 18 that will make the team. So I go to the tryouts and perform well in the tryouts. Then they call back, they say, you've made it to the next round and the next round. Well, they get down to 25 players and I'm still a part of the team. So we go to the final tryout, and now my Little League coach is taking me, every weekend when we're going to these tryouts. So they announced the final team. Now I'm one of 18 kids, in New Jersey that have made the Project Pride All-Star team that's going to go compete internationally. So my bubble get burst because once I made the team, they sent a letter home to my mom, basically explaining, your son, congratulations, your son has made this all-star team, and it's going to cost $500 for him to travel to Puerto Rico to play in this tournament.
Yeah.
And my mom set me down, and she was in tears, and she was just like, she said, baby, I'm sorry. She said, I do not have $500 for you to go play baseball. And it hurt so bad because I wanted to go play, but I think it hurt even deeper because I know how hard my mom was working.
Yeah.
I know she wasn't saying that I couldn't go because she didn't want me to go. It was the circumstances. She just couldn't afford for me to go.
Yeah.
So, that whole summer, I was kind of sad the whole summer because, I'm 11 years old. I don't know any better but to be sad. But at the same time, fast forward the following year. Now this news happened to get out within the community.
Okay, that you could not go because of
that I made the team, but I was not able to go because my mom could not afford it. So the following year come around and I go to try out again. I make the team. I'll fast forward. I make the team. And this time I'm selected captain of the team.
Oh, come on. They got to have a scholarship for the captain.
Well, they didn't at this time. But my scholarship, you would be amazed. I would say the community, the families in the community, the guys in the community, they literally got together, put the money into a hat, brought it to my mom, and said, Bo is going to Puerto Rico this year.
That's awesome.
And I would say that was it was a major turning point because at some point you need to leave your own community. Like you need to go play against other, states or other regions to really see how you stack up. Because it's one thing to dominate your community. It was another thing for me to go to Puerto Rico, and we won the championship in Puerto Rico. I was named MVP, pitched a 1-hitter and a 2-hitter, was the number 3 batter on the team, and, led the team in home runs and RBIs. And it was on that stage that now my mind starts to really realize, like, okay, I have a chance to play here. I have a chance to advance, in baseball, because I'm not just doing it at Southwood Little League. I'm able to dominate my peers, even in Puerto Rico and in Guatemala and, in South Jersey. Along the way, before we even got ready to travel internationally, we played probably 15 games, in the state of New Jersey, in surrounding areas. And I was able to play against all the other competition. So someone's kind gesture, I look today and I say this, even from a philanthropic standpoint, this is why philanthropy is so important to me. Everything we do for ourselves will die with us. Everything we do for other people has a chance to live forever. And that's
Say that one more time. Say that one more time for the listeners.
I said everything we do for ourselves will die with us.
Yeah.
Everything we do for other people has a chance to live forever. So I think about Mr. Taylor, who, rest in peace, he was actually able to see me play Major League Baseball.
Oh, that's awesome.
In Yankee Stadium.
Awesome.
So, I was playing with the Oakland A's. We are playing the New York Yankees in the playoffs in 2000. And before we got ready to make the trip, I call home and I'm talking to my family. Mr. Taylor actually had moved off of that block, and we no longer live there either. So some family members and some of the, people in the community, they were able to track down the family. And Mr. Taylor, he said, I followed this kid's career, all the way from Newark to Iowa to the major leagues. And he was just honored to be able to come to the game with my family and get to witness me playing Major League Baseball. And I told him that day, I said, you may not realize this, or you may not want to take credit for it, but if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here tonight.
That's right.
So that's what I mean when I say everything you do for someone else has a chance to live forever. It's because of what Mr. Taylor did for me. It's why I continue to pay my blessings forward. And by paying my blessings forward and doing for other people, that's how that process just continue to carry on. And you fast forward today, Amanda, this is what brings it full circle. In 2015, I get a telephone call from the mayor of Newark, New Jersey. And unannounced to me, because I hadn't been back in New Jersey. I left New Jersey in 1990. And, I may visit family here or there, but I hadn't been back in New Jersey, for any extended period of time. So Southwood Little League, Green Acres Park, had been closed down for like 12 years. Just dormant, no one was using it. And the mayor called me in 2015 and he said, oh, I just want to, we're sitting here in our weekly meeting, and, we're thinking about doing something. We want to get your blessing and approval. So I said, what is that? He said, well, we're thinking about remodeling Green Acres and, putting a brand new baseball field and, basketball court and student center. And I said, wow. I said, whoa. I said, that would be great. I said, tell me, who I write the check out to. And he goes, no. This is not about you writing the check. He said, we want to rename it Marquez Bo Porter Sports Complex.
Wow.
And I said, whoa, humble. Immediately, I just told him, I said, no. I don't want it named after me. I tried to give them a couple of other people, including my high school baseball coach who had passed away. And they didn't want to do that. They said, no, you are the only person from Newark, New Jersey to ever be a Major League Baseball manager. And we want this to have your name on it in the city of Newark. This is where you play Little League Baseball. And our kids need to be able to come up and read this plaque and know that anything is possible.
Yeah. And so that's incredible. And one of the things that I think is so incredible too is that you're always thinking about the youth and people who are going to come behind. And let me ask this question. How did you were obviously a very prolific athlete, right? But how did you actually get yourself into the majors? Because a lot of people are wonderful athletes. You hear about their high school career, you hear about their college career, you hear about all of the things they did, and it comes to a certain point. For those that are really striving toward really big goals, like playing in the majors, like you did, how did you do that in terms of, staying motivated? What setbacks did you experience in that journey that made you question whether you would continue on or could continue on? What would you say for those that are listening out there who have kind of self-doubt and say, oh, I can never do fill in the blank, whether it's baseball or it's some other effort, whether it's athletic or otherwise? What would you say to them, and what would you say was a secret sauce or ingredients for you being able to actually make it? Because so many people want to make it, but how did you actually put all the pieces together and do it?
The first thing I would tell them is get good at failure. I think a lot of times.
Say that one more time. Get good at failure.
Get good at failure.
Okay.
I think a lot of times, especially when we have the opportunity to speak to people or breathe into people, we talk about success a lot.
Yes.
And I'm a firm believer that the better you are at failure, the more opportunities you will have for success.
Yep.
Because, failure is not final.
That's right.
And especially in the game of baseball, when you think about, the different sports. And I use this analogy a lot. When you think about in baseball, you can be 3 for 10 throughout the course of your career and be a career 300 hitter, and you go to the Hall of Fame. Like, to be the best ever.
Yeah.
When you think about being 30% at something.
Yeah, that's not usually the passing grade, right?
That's not the passing grade. I mean, if you're 30% in your schoolwork, you're not going to get any good marks. Right. If you are a basketball player and you're only making 30% of your shots, you're probably not going to be able to be on a team too long. So I say get good at failure, because when you think about falling short, people, I use the terminology champion a lot, and people think that being a champion is about being number one. Champion is not about being number one, because champions are champions because they have the ability to continue to fight until they become number one, until they accomplish the goal. That's awesome. It's not the journey that's going to defeat them. Yeah. So I tell people this all the time. You should really look at failing into success, because with failure comes a greater opportunity to overcome. And some of our best life lessons have come from failure. A lot of times, people that go through life and they don't experience failure at a young age and don't really understand how to deal with it, it can be very troublesome if that happens later on in their life, say 28, 29, and this is the first time they're staring failure in the face. It can become traumatizing to where they're just not able to overcome it.
Yeah. And so you've got to learn how to fail. And so in your case, on your journey to becoming a major league player, what was one of the most pivotal failures you encountered that really helped to catapult you forward?
I think one of the most pivotal points, because I was a two-sport athlete. I played football and baseball at the University of Iowa. And for a long time, people used to ask me, even my sophomore year, when I'm on the football team, and I'm the starting safety on the football team, I'm the starting center field on the baseball team, and I was able to strike that balance to where I was all in with football during football season, I was all in with baseball during baseball season, but I knew there was going to come a point in time where I was going to have to make a decision. Yeah. So once that decision was made, I always felt like, well, if baseball don't work out, I'll fall back on football. If football don't work out, I'll fall back on baseball. Well, once the rubber met the road and I agreed not to play football, and now it was full steam ahead baseball. This was my first full season. So up until this point, I had never played a full season of baseball. It was always half a season, leave and go back and play football. So in my first full season, I hit 217. 217.
Wow.
Which I thought the world was coming to an end.
Yeah.
And because I had never hit less than 380.
Yeah.
And that summer, I started to question, like, did I make the right decision?
Yeah, you were like, let me go pick up that football again.
I started questioning, did I make the right decision? And it was a teammate of mine. We were actually on the road. We were in Clearwater, Florida.
Okay.
We were on the road. And my roommate on the road was Troy Forkaway.
Okay.
Who is one of my dearest friends. He's actually a scout for the Chicago Cubs today. And we were sitting in a room, and I told him, I said, you know what? I said, I think when we get back, man, I said, I think I'm gonna, call my agent, and I think I'm gonna just hang up my spikes and go the football route. And Trey Forkaway looked at me, and he said, why would you do that? I said, Trey, I said, look, I said, I'm hitting like 205 at the time, hitting like 205. And I said, this is no fun. He said, Bo, let me tell you something. He said, you have more talent than everybody on this team. He said, but the one mistake that you keep making, you keep thinking about going back to football instead of thinking about playing baseball. And
so paying attention to your past versus staying focused on your future.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that, and I kind of raised up, and I said, say that again. He said, you keep thinking about going back to play football when you have the ability. He said, you have more ability than anybody here. He said, but you also have more options than anybody here. Sometimes options are not good. A lot of times
because it's like you don't want to commit.
People want optionality. Sometimes options are not good because options kind of make us, in the back of our mind, think like, well, okay, if I don't have to do this, I can go over here and I can do this.
Yeah.
And I'm speaking from firsthand experience. It wasn't until I completely put football behind me and said, okay, I am going to put all 10 toes and both feet into baseball. At that point, I want to say I was hitting 205 and really ready to walk away from the game.
Yeah.
The rest of that summer, we probably had about 20 games left. I took my average from 205, and I think I finished right about 220. So I raised my batting average like 15 points, which is almost, not even heard of that late in the season.
Yeah. We
make the playoffs. I go on to hit like 500 in the playoffs, and we win the championship.
That's crazy.
And the rest of, my career it takes off from there. And, 3 years later, I'm in the big leagues playing for the Chicago Cubs. But, when you look at baseball and you pose the question of, making it, I've seen a lot of people, Amanda, that have the ability, but they don't have the mindset.
Yes.
They have the ability, but they don't have the fortitude. They have the ability, but they don't have the work ethic. When you look at being that less than 1%, that playmate, it's only 18,700 of us in the world.
Wow. That's crazy.
In the world. So when you think about that, it's less than 1%. So you're trying to do something that's only been accomplished by less than 1% of the population. So you're going to have to do some things that you probably don't want to do.
Like what?
Like you're going to have to work when you don't want to work.
Yeah.
You're going to, if you're not academically inclined, you're going to have to force yourself to do your academic work so that you can stay on the field and you can stay eligible and put yourself. I know many people that played with me at Southwood Little League that had just as much talent or more talent than I had. They never made it out of Newark because they were not committed to their academics.
It's
I
about
have,
putting those pieces, all of the pieces of the puzzle together. If you can put them all together and
yes,
commit
and
to
that's
them.
why whole person development is so important.
Mm-hmm.
It goes beyond the field of play. I have a teammate of mine that was drafted in the third round. He was a switch hitter, played center field just like I played center field.
Mm-hmm.
We happened to be locker mates during spring training. This happened to be 1995 during the strike.
Okay.
And they were, trying to get minor league players, to cross the line. So he came to me. We're sitting in the locker room, and this is after the major league guys come down and they talk to us about the union and, we got to stand strong. We're fighting for you guys so that when you get here, your salaries are going to be, better than our salaries. We're trying to make it better for you. Right. So they were offering the minor leaguers at the time that if you cross the line, they're going to give you $50,000. Well, the flip side of that is if you cross the line, you can never be a part of the union.
Right.
Which means that you can never get a pension. You can never, be a part of the revenue share as it relates to the Players Association. So my locker mate, who was highly talented, switch hitter, third round pick, had more talent than me. Mm-hmm. He says to me, he said, are you gonna cross the line? I said, oh, absolutely not. He said, why not? I said, because I'm gonna play in the big leagues.
There you go. You had to have faith in what you were striving toward, and willing to forego a temporary win, what could be a temporary win for the long-term game.
Yes. So listen to his answer though. Well, his question to me. Okay. He said, you really think you're going to play in the big leagues? So I looked at him and I said, I wouldn't be here for any other reason.
Yeah.
So fast forward, I'm now in the big leagues. That following year, he actually walked away from baseball. He got out to a rough start. He was struggling and literally left without the team even knowing.
Wow.
The team called his dad. His dad said, well, he's on the freeway. He's on his way home. I'll do my best to try to talk him back into coming back and playing. Now, this guy was a third round pick. He signed for about $500,000 and never made it out of A-ball.
Wow.
We're in Pittsburgh playing the Pirates. I come out. I'm getting ready for the game. I come out ready to run out to the foul line to get loose. And I hear somebody calling my name, Bo Porter. Bo Porter. And you hear fans all the time. So then he goes, hey, it's V. So I turn around and
your teammate.
It's him.
Yeah.
So he comes down by the dugout. He shake my hand and he said, man, I wish I had your drive. He said, I sit here every day and I scratch my head and say to myself, I could have been playing in the big leagues. Mm-hmm. I will say this for your listening audience. Regret is the worst feeling in the world. Whatever you're doing in life, do it to the best of your ability. Okay. Give everything you have. Don't leave no screw unturned and let the cards fall where they may.
Yeah.
It's always acceptable to be able to look yourself square in the mirror and say, I gave everything I had. And if it doesn't work out, that means that it wasn't for you.
That's right.
That God decided that wasn't for you and he has something greater for you. But regret, it's tough to swallow.
It's this, I always have this principle that, with me and how I approach life is always thinking about if something is not intended, similar to what you're saying, for me, it's not going to be for a lack of my effort. I'm going to work absolutely as diligently and as hard as I possibly can and make as many sacrifices that are required of me in order to help realize whatever that dream is or whatever that pursuit is. Now, that doesn't always mean just because you work hard or that you focus that you're always going to get what you're seeking, right? Sometimes
Yes,
that's
nothing
not in
promised
the
you.
cards.
Yes.
You don't walk away saying, I should have done this more, or I could have done, shoulda, woulda, coulda, right? You
Yes.
walk away understanding or appreciating the lesson in life, which is that you give it your all at absolutely all the time. You give it your all, and it's never at your own doing that, you're not able to be successful at what you're pursuing. It's because that's not intended for you.
Yes. And what we have to realize is just because we deserve something don't mean that we're going to get it.
That's right.
Yes, you can deserve it and you can deserve it and you can still not get it.
That's right. And people experience it all the time. And then the ability to persevere, which you're highlighting, is also an element. Like you said, some people can't handle failure. So, or can't handle setbacks. And failure, so it sounds so final, but a setback, everybody experiences setbacks, whether they talk about it or not. And so the question becomes, how do you respond to that? And as you've shown with your own life, the cream of the crop rises. The cream of the crop that rises is that also the individual or people who can handle and respond to setbacks appropriately, right? Because if you say, I got to pack up and go home because I've had a setback or I'm not performing at the level I'd like to, then you've quit on yourself.
And I'm going to tell you, when you think about quitting, and I speak to young people a lot, and quitting is one of the things that I address with them because I think it's a learned trait. And
tell me about that. So we're not born just feeling like we need to quit. We're born tenacious and feeling like we can conquer it all.
Exactly.
Self-doubt creeps in.
People who struggle with that, I think one of the things that I try to tell them that should help them is that the only thing quitting will guarantee you, it's only one thing it can guarantee you. You will never know whether or not you were good enough. That's the only guarantee. You will never know if you were good enough. Because if you continue on, you just might accomplish what you set out to accomplish. And that's why you should never allow someone else to tell you that you're not good enough to do something, because God didn't download it into them.
That's right.
So do not allow them to embark their fears or their insecurities onto you.
Mm-hmm. And so don't ever allow other people's limited views of you become your own, right? Because you can't harbor their limited views. They don't have the vision because it's not their vision. It's yours.
And I remember when I first had aspirations to be a major league manager, and I shared it with just some of my ex-teammates and people that were in the game, and immediately they were just like, listen, those jobs are not for us. And I go, huh? No, those, you may be able to be a coach, but ain't nobody gonna let you be a manager.
Yeah.
And immediately for me, it was, okay, this is my vision board. I didn't
see your name on this vision board. I thought it was both.
With you. I didn't ask you to, grab a pen and partake in anything that's on my vision board.
Listen, and they got an eraser. They're erasing, taking it down. What we allow people, the influence we allow people to have on our visions and our dreams. You got to be protective of that. So what is your policy about, do you typically not share things with people or just certain people? Or tell me kind of how, you learned along the way, given when you told people about your dream or desire to become a manager, which is not an easy feat, how people responded to it, how that shaped how you approach it now.
Well, I think as you grow, I think your circle gets smaller.
Yeah.
That's been, the story of my life. I have a small group of people that I share different things with, whether it's something in which, I want to get off the ground or something I inspired to do. And I try to surround myself with people that are encouragers. Mm-hmm. And I think that's so important. Negative people are draining. People that don't want to support you in your goals, while at the same time, corrective criticism is something that, when you're ambitious and, you're inspired to do a lot, you also have to be a good listener. And that it doesn't mean, but I'll say this to people, it doesn't mean that you can't do it. It just probably means that you won't be able to do it the way you're thinking about doing it.
Right.
So because someone is telling you that you can't do something, let's just say you share a business plan with someone that you know and trust. And that person look at the plan and they go, no, that's not going to work. Now, they may not have a reason for why they're saying it's not going to work. It's just they're looking at it, and through the lens in which they're looking, it's not going to work. Now, the next step is for you to figure out if they're not able to verbalize to you why it's not going to work. You may have to get back into the lab and dissect it yourself and say, okay, now why is such and such saying this is not going to work? And I'm speaking from firsthand experience because I've had situations like this, and I took it to one of my mentors and one of my business partners. They couldn't tell me why they didn't think it was going to work. But then I went back into the lab and made some changes and kind of restructured some of the plan. I took it back to them, and 2 months later they go, now this is going to work. It was the same. It was trying to accomplish the same thing. Yeah. But I just went about it a different way.
Yeah. And so you mentioned, you kind of gloss over coaching and then managing in Major League Baseball. Tell me what that experience was like. What was something that you were really proud of in that experience? And then, of course, setbacks in concert with that, and what that was like, and what advice that you think you can share with others in terms of actually pivoting, because a lot of people don't pivot, right? So you went from Major League Baseball as an athlete to then coaching and becoming a manager. How did those pivots happen? And for those that are listening and thinking about, well, I couldn't do all of those things, or I could maybe do one and not the others. How did you do that?
One, I think from a player standpoint, the entire time as a player, I've always played the game like in its entirety. So I was always curious about the fundamentals of the game and the integral chess match that went on between the coaches or the managers. And so as my career, got to the back, by the time I got to the back end of my career, there were many coaches and managers that I had played for that, came to me and they said, look, you've always been a leader. Your teammates and peers, they respect you. You really should think about, staying in the game in some capacity. And at that point, I would look at them and go, oh, Tom, I'm not ready to retire. What are you trying to, push me out the door? So, but I think it was more forward thinking, and that's why wisdom is so important. And it's important for us to listen to wisdom and wise counsel, because they were able to see what I hadn't even, decided that this was a path that I wanted to go. But here it is. I have coaches and people that are in the profession telling me, listen, you have what it takes to be a coach and to be a manager. So that opened up some doors immediately when I retired. Organizations, they picked up the phone and it's like, look, I don't know what you're going to do in your post-career, but we would love to have you. So I ended up taking a job with the Miami Marlins with the Florida Marlins at the time. And it was good because I was able to take all the things in which I've learned, and now I'm helping other people reach their full potential. Right. So in the early stages of coaching, one of the biggest, I guess, hurdles as it becomes evident from a player to coach standpoint, you have to get past the notion of thinking that the game is easy for everybody. So as a coach, it was tough for me in my first year because the outfielder comes up and let's just say he misses the cutoff man or he throws the ball to the wrong base. And in my mind, I'm saying to myself, like, man, I mean, you saw that guy.
You're like, what did you just do?
Yeah, like, why would you throw the ball? So I had to change my level of communication because that's how I would communicate to my teammate.
Yeah.
But now I'm actually coaching, so I need to actually get the player to expedite his learning process. Like when I'm talking to my teammate, I'm talking to them, and it's almost like we're like ragging on each other. Like, man, that's just dumb. Why would you do that?
Right.
But now I'm the coach, so I can't just tell the player, well, that's just dumb. Why would you do that?
Right.
Because
you gotta teach them.
I have to teach them.
Yeah.
So that was a learning curve that, I sat down with Bill Parcells, who was one of my mentors and was still one of my mentors. And he told me, he said, Bo, what you got to realize as a player, your main concern was having yourself ready to play. You had complete control over that.
Yeah.
Now, as a coach, your job is to put them in position to be ready to play.
That's right.
Once the game start, you don't have any control over what's going to happen once they get out there. But you do have control of their preparation and them being ready and prepared when they get out there.
That's right.
So that really spoke volume to me. That's why I'm such a stickler for fundamentals. Mm-hmm. And when you start to think about the game, whether it's football, basketball, baseball, it really doesn't matter what the game is, whether, it's ping pong and I'm beating Amanda. The fundamentals of the game don't change. And I've always prided myself as a coach. And I think that's what my coaches that were coaching me started to realize late in my career. I kind of took it upon myself to mentor younger players and to make sure that they were doing things fundamentally right, because that's what the older players did for me. Mm-hmm. And that's what kind of prepared me, for a coaching career. And once I became a coach, I was a third base coach, but I always thought about the game in its entirety of, okay, why did this manager make that decision? Or why did we do this? Or why? So it was almost self-imposed.
Yeah. So you were already thinking about management decisions in the context of your job.
I'm a firm believer, Amanda, you have to be it before you are it.
Yes. So act like a partner in order to be a partner.
Yes. So I kind of put myself into that train of thought. So even when I became a manager, it wasn't like this was the first time I was a manager, because all of those thoughts were already going through my mind every game I was coaching. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And so that's incredible. Let me ask this question. Were, you coming in, you doing something that was unusual, and not just in terms of the coaching, but with regard to management, that's got to be a lot of pressure. How did you work through some of the pressure you experienced in terms of all eyes on you in when you're doing something that's really outside of the box? And what advice do you have for other people who are in what could be considered isolating experiences, because there are not a lot of people who they know who have had those experiences? How did you deal with that, and what advice would you have?
Well, one, I think you have to ignore the noise.
Okay.
And, I would give anybody that advice whenever you are in, those positions that are going to be, highly scrutinized. Mm-hmm. One, preparation is your best friend. Mm-hmm. And you have to make sure that you're doing everything that you can to put your team, to put your players in the best position to be successful. I would tell players this all the time. I'm paid to make decisions. Now, you could either prove me right or you can prove me wrong. But you don't have the luxury to go do what you do prior to me making a decision. And the people that are going to question it, they only get to question it after the outcome has already been determined. Mm-hmm. Whereas all of my decisions have to be made prior to the outcome being determined.
Right.
So everyone is a little bit smarter once that's why I love broadcasting now.
Yeah.
Because I'm only reporting on what has already happened.
That's right. And then you say, I wouldn't have done that.
everybody is a lot smarter once the outcome is in front of us. But as a manager, what we're paid to do, we're paid to make decisions before the outcome is going to be rendered. But that's why preparation, understanding, your own players. Mm-hmm. I think, even from my time with the Astros, as they were going through the rebuild and we were kind of outmanned. And when I say outmanned, talent wise, our team didn't stack up, to a lot of the teams that were in the American League or in Major League Baseball at that time. But I never allowed our players to use that as an excuse. I mean, I basically told them, listen, they put their pants on the same way that we do. They can't take their paycheck to the batter's box or to the pitcher's mound or to the field. Once this game starts, no one cares how much money anybody make.
Yeah.
So I think it's that mentality, that I've always tried to preach. And if you find yourself in a position where it's all eyes on you and everyone is, waiting for you to make a decision, to scrutinize it, the best thing you can do is be well prepared. And if you're well prepared, that's put you in a position to make the best decisions that you can make for the people that you are charged to lead. There's no substitute for preparation.
Absolutely. So then you alluded to it, and I know we're running out of time, but your transition into broadcasting and now media. Tell me about what challenges you have now experienced in this latest stage. You've got such an interesting story. So many times, you've had so many different careers. And so the latest venture in terms of not just doing the broadcasting, but also starting your own media company, what have been some of the challenges you've experienced and some of the pieces of advice that you would have for others who are looking at, maybe they might not have started as many career opportunities as you have, but certainly are looking to embark on a new journey. Maybe they're going to start something new in 2021. Who knows? What advice would you have based on the experiences that you've had in terms of entering the space of broadcasting and media?
Well, the first advice that I would give anyone who is thinking about starting a new venture, I would tell them, 1, do your research. 2, try to gain valuable experience.
Okay.
And for me, media was a seamless transition. My degree is in communication. It's something that when I was at the University of Iowa, the reason I majored in broadcasting communication is I felt like it would be a good pathway once my sports career, came to an end. I would be able to transition into the media space. So that was something that I thought about long ago. And it just so happened when I arrived at the back end of my career, whether it was coaching, managing, executive, and now I was ready to transition into the media space, my desire to start my own media company more so centered around, when you think about media and controlling the narrative, we all have seen how the narrative can be controlled if you don't control the media aspect of it. That's right. That was one component of it. The other component of it, it was just wanting to put out stories that represent being a champion. And that's
what does CORE stand for?
CORE stands for Champions of Real Excellence. So when you think about CORE and the different, the different mediums of CORE, it all, stems from how can we inspire and empower people to want to do more and be more. And we try to take stories of champions and put them into a position where, whether it's with our magazine, whether it's through the different podcasts that's going to start to roll out here in 2021, or through our cinema, which we have just gotten that off the ground as well. There's going to be some movie trailers that are going to be coming, late 2021, early 2022. All of these are stories of champions that you will be able to, whether it's you're reading it in the magazine, whether you're, a subscriber to our digital platform, whether you're watching a CORE podcast network, or when the cinema, make it to the big screen, watching a CORE multimedia group movie.
Well, Bo, it's a phenomenal feat. And I remember first reading about what you were trying to accomplish and thinking to myself, oh, he's a perfect fit for the Empowerment Talk, since you are using that platform now, the media platform, to empower people by telling these really powerful stories and motivating people. So I can't thank you enough, not just in terms of what you're doing now, in terms of elevating the stories, creating the narratives, or telling the narrative or retelling those narratives that have never been told. I know that I won't give away some of the things I know that you're working on right now. So I'm really excited about the work that you're doing with CORE, but I'm also just as excited about with the work that you've done with Self Foundation and all of the youth work that you've been able to do. I've seen kids literally and their parents and how excited they've been in terms of the impact that you've had on their lives. And so although you're not at the end of your career, you've had many career paths. Always what has been consistent is that you have been willing to give back. And I think to whom much is given, much is required. And you've been able to give back to others to make sure that it's not just something you take with you by yourself, but something that you can leave as a legacy for other people. So I congratulate you. I commend you. And also just encourage you to stay as motivated as you've been because of the impact that it's had on the community. So thank you so much for being my guest, being a great role model. And for those that are listening, and sorry we have to wrap up, but for those that are listening or watching, tell us where they can find you. Social media, tell us where, websites, where do people find Bo Porter?
Yes, for CORE, you can go to core-mag.com. to find all there is to find about CORE Magazine. For on Instagram, it's at The Real Bo Porter. On Twitter, it's Bo Porter 16 Bo on Twitter, and then on Facebook, it's just Bo Porter.
Awesome. Well, we cannot wait. I know a lot of people use 2020 as a year to reflect and learn a number of life lessons, but we are all recharged, hopefully, and renewed. And part of that renewal journey for a lot of us will be tuning into what you're doing with CORE. So thank you so much, Bo, for being here and for having such a tremendous impact, not only in terms of Major League Baseball, but a tremendous impact on the community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amanda, for having me. This has been my pleasure.
You're welcome. And that wraps up our Edwards Empowerment Talks episode. And I hope you will join me next time.
I would like to extend a special thank you to the Texas Signal for its support of our podcast.